Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. Let's wrap up that draft set review for Shimmering Skies with a little bit of steel. Amethyst, I think, has the most number of my favorite cards, but it might be steel. Let's take a look at it. Steel's got a lot of good stuff in here, everyone. Do not sleep on some of these steel hits. There's a couple especially that are chef's kiss. Alright, let's check it out. So we're going to do A, B, C, D, F as our rating system. A is first pickable and happy to first pick it. This is a bomb or just really effective card. There are commons that are absolutely within this territory. But ultimately, it's something that you're just like, you open your pack, you look at it, and you're like, yeah, this is the one for me. Love this one. Happy to have it, right? That's an A. B is, I'll first pick it, but I'm not going to be absolutely thrilled about it. But I'm definitely very happy to pick this up and have this in my deck. I will always play this card, and I'm going to kind of be picking it in the first half of the pack. C's are your, like, journeyman staples of your deck. You're almost always going to play these cards unless you've drafted so well that your deck's just crammed full of A's and B's. So you're always going to play these cards, or almost always. But you're not exactly thrilled to be taking them. You're just like, okay, these are cards that are going to fill out my deck, right? These are the cards that you want kind of in the middle to last half of the pack, and they're solid. D is, ideally, I'd like to not have this in my deck. I will play this, but I'd like to not have this in my deck if I can help it, and I'm certainly not wasting any early picks on it. These are cards that you are going to be picking up because it's the only cards left in the last third of the pack, right? Ideally, these should all be inkable. If they're that bad, you should not be taking an uninkable card that's that quality, right? And then F is don't play it. And usually that's because they're uninkable and they're like D quality and uninkable. But it could also, there could be some inkable cards that I rate as S just because they're so bad. And in that case, obviously, if they're inkable and you need ink, you're going to play them in your deck because you're only eliminating 8 cards that you drafted. So if you have, 8 uninkables that are Fs, you're going to play an F that's inkable, of course, right? But you should try never to have this anywhere near your deck, and you should only be using it as ink if I've got an inkable F in there. Let's start with Stitch, Team Underdog. Now, I've referenced this card a few times through the previous ink reviews, and yeah, is good. It is a 4-drop 1/4/1 lore. When it comes into play, when you play this character, you can deal 2 damage to chosen character. Notice not at the damaged character, not at whatever. It is just 2 damage straight up to chosen character. That can be huge. You have some early trades where maybe they get an advantageous trade and they've got a big body left, but it's only got like 2 willpower left. Boom. They got an evasive, like Archimedes, that you can't deal with. Boom. They've got even a 1-drop or 2-drop. If you can get rid of it for effectively free, that's fantastic. And then the couple of things where you can return characters, this might be a prime target. The 4-drop, you're not necessarily thrilled to pay for again, but there's so little removal in this set, especially just pure limitless removal here. You don't have the limitations of the damaged character or anything like that. Fantastic. The only thing that's kind of working against it is the uninkable. As I mentioned in our Ruby set review, there's a lot of uninkables that I really like in this set, especially at a low drop. So you gotta be careful about having too many. You can't have like 4 Arthurs and 2 Turbos and 3 Stitches. You're really gonna start having problems. What's my sweet spot for uninkables? I think 6 to 8 is where I'm comfortable. 10 is really starting to push it, and more than 10 and you're asking for trouble. You got to be really, really cautious about your mulligans, even getting close to 10. So just keep that in mind with what you're drafting, what you've taken so far, what's available. This is a really high pickup and potentially the best or second best. I would argue the second best behind King of Hearts 4-drop. But that uninkable, you just got to be cautious about. So it is still a high B, But you just got to be careful. It becomes a kind of mid to low B if you got too many uninkables. Jafar. So, 6-drop, 0-7. Not the best stat line without reading anything else. But it's got 2 lore. And here's where it's got Challenger +7. That's a big swing when you're challenging. But opposing characters with cost 4 or less can't challenge? What? Not can't challenge this character. Can't challenge, period. 4 or less. Not 2 or less. Not some Gantu territory here. 4 or less. Oh. If you've gone aggressive and this is your top end, and you throw that down and all of a sudden maybe they've got 1 5 or 6 drop or maybe even a couple that they can still challenge with, then everything else, no go. Oh, that's a rough place for them to be. And at a 6-drop inkable, obviously I'm not a huge fan. Well, obviously, if you've seen any of my previous videos from a year ago, I'm not a huge fan of Challenger in draft because I just hate potentially being hit back when I've got 0 strength that I'm hitting back with. But when they can't hit Jafar with anything 4 cost or less, or any of your other characters, that's all of a sudden a great place to be. Combine this with King of Hearts, locking down their 5+ drops. Oh, that's a great place to be. It doesn't necessarily look that way, but I would call this a bomb. Like, this is real good in draft. A, definitely. Where it ranks on that A scale, but it's got to be one of the top. Like, I have a feeling this is going to play out as being at least top 5 card in the set, if not even higher. Simba is probably my favorite 3-drop in the set. Relatively unassuming, 3-drop 2/4/1. I've talked down about quite a few previous 3-drop 2/4s. But this one, when it banishes another character in a challenge, you draw a card. And if you can combine this with ways to remove that damage or prevent it from being challenged back, and you can get 2 banishes in of some early plays, but even 1, let's not be greedy. Take out their 2-drop, draw a card, they swing back, maybe you trade again, or, they swing back with a 3/4 and you don't get as favorable a trade on the swing back. But if you've still drawn at least 1 card and taken out another character, you've got at least a 2-for-1, if not better. Yeah. The 4 willpower really helps controlling the early game. It's not a super sexy turn 6 play. At that point, it might just be ink, but turns 3, 4, 5, in addition with other plays. Yeah, I really like this card. It's not getting into the A territory, but this is definitely a high B for me. And I think the best 3-drop. We've talked about the 1 cost 2/2s. They're a low B. Take them higher than you are, especially if you're grabbing all the Stitch team underdogs and, the 5-drop Hey we're going to look at in a second, and the 5-drop Zazus, and all of these big plays that are so sweet in this set. You got to have some early plays to pivot, to balance those. I've mentioned how many good 4-drops there is. This is the first time we've seen a 4-drop 1/7, so there's not really anything we can compare it to. It's going to survive a long time, but there's so many better 4-drops. It's inkable, which is great, but this is a low C for me, and you really hope this isn't your turn 4 play. Mickey's interesting, right? 1, if you've got the mini that allows you to gain some lore, there's some interest here. 2, it survives Arthur and the other 2/2s on turn 1, so you can get a couple quests out of it while giving a little bit of chip damage with that 1 strength. I'm always hesitant about the 1-drop 1/2s, but this is one that I could probably get behind. Does this stack up better than the 0/4s? Yeah, I think so. I think I like this better than the 0/4s, especially if you happen to have that 3-drop 2/4 mini in Ruby. Not much more, though. I still would call this a C. Probably a mid-C at that point then, rather than a low C. Unless you're really desperate to stall for time, you got some amazing low-cost plays to defend. An 0-strength bodyguard is not where you want to be. For 1 more cost, you get a 2/4 bodyguard with Fix-It Felix. 0-4? No, thank you. I mean, it's not as useless as the 0-4 ward queen. It's probably still a really low C or high D, but no. Again, don't love Challenger, but this is strictly better than the Dr. Facilier from the first set, which was a 0-4 Challenger 2. This is a 1-4 Challenger 1. So it deals 1 more damage on the backswing, but I still don't love it. There's plenty of other better 2-drops to control the early game. I still think it's fine. You know, I would definitely play this over, obviously, was it Kita in the Amber slot? Whichever the Brother Bear character was, that was the 2-drop 1-4 there. Obviously, we like this better, but not much, right? So this is probably a mid-C to a kind of higher low C. Is this the best 5-drop in the set? Zazu and Heihei are really fighting for that spot in terms of non-rare, right? There's probably a rare plus 5-drop that's better. I'm not thinking of one off the top of my head, but quite possibly the best common or uncommon 5-drop in the game. And at common, so good. I would have been satisfied with this as a 5-drop 4/5/1 bodyguard, let alone 2 lore. It's really hard for them not to have to trade 2 characters into this. It quests for 2 lore. It is timed perfectly with protecting your King of Hearts. King of Hearts on 4. Exert King of Hearts turn 5 to lock down their best character. Play Heihei to protect King of Hearts. So good. So good. This is an A. This is a low A, but I'm okay first picking this. If I've got some mediocre rares or you know, rare, super rare legendaries, I am very okay first picking this. This is a low A for me, absolutely. And in the common slot, not even uncommon. Get out of here. Heihei. You protect that. I don't know what he's protecting. What is this guy protecting? How is this a 4/5? How is Heihei a 4/5? Get out of here. Most of the knights are hot garbage. When you play this character, chosen knight character gains +2 challenger this turn. Not even an ability that I'd be that excited about if it didn't have the limitation of knight. But add the limitation of it needing to be a knight for a 4-cost 3/4/1? This is low, you know, mid to low D territory. Likewise, Dopey, when you play this character, if you have another knight, you can deal 1 whole damage. Woo! Compare this to Stitch? I know it's inkable, but come on. No, another D. Namari is another of the 9 costs, so this is the last of this series. This is one that's more doable than Amber and Sapphires, but not by much. It's not just that you have to challenge a certain amount of characters, but you have to banish them in that challenge, right? You got to banish 2 characters for this to be playable. I mean, again, 7 is doable, but 7 on Inkable is really tough still. Now, Resist 3 is serious. Resist 3 means Namari is almost never going to get banished if you play her. They would have to throw 5 characters at this. 5 4-strength characters at Namari to deal with her. So if you get her out, huge presence, right? 3 lore, can challenge a bunch, can take challenges if you're rushing for lore. But you gotta banish 2 characters to realistically get her out, or 1 to hopefully get her out at 7. And by the time you get her out at 7, I still think that you play her, like you try to make this work, but I feel like she's probably, of the 6, she's probably the 4th most likely to get stuck in your hand, right? Amber and Sapphire by far are unplayable. But next to those 2, she's the next likely to get stuck in your hand. Just having enough characters out on both sides and the right stats lining up for you to banish 1 to 2 characters at the time that you want to and can play her. Nah. I'm going to try to make her work every single time I see her, but I'm not... I would be, like, for example, I'm definitely taking Hey over her. I'm taking, a lot of stuff. I'm taking King of Hearts over her. What does that mean? Mid B? Low B? I'm going to try and make it work, but you're asking for trouble. Alright, Snow White, 5 cost 3/5/3 lore, who might occasionally get resist 1. You're not stacking knights, especially with how bad they are. No. She's really almost all the time going to be a 5-drop 3/5/3 lore, and you've got so many better plays than that. Yeah, I mean, is she slightly better than Ed, the 4-cost uninkable 2/4/3 lore? Maybe not even, because that one damaged characters can't challenge it. So she's probably even worse than Ed. Which means she's what, a very low C, but probably an F. I can't really put her in D territory because she's not inkable, so she's probably just an F. But I'm not gonna laugh at someone who plays this across from me, but I'm probably gonna feel pretty good about it. Yzma, again, one of the few pieces of straight up removal. It is whenever, so it's not limited to once per turn. But 1 damage isn't a lot, and as we've established, timing the banishing of characters can be really challenging. On my 3-drop inkable Simba, I'm much happier with that caveat, because I expect there's going to be some low drops when I put him out on 3 to deal with. And his body is decent enough that I'm not too worried about it. This is 1 more cost, 1 less strength. 1 more lore, admittedly. I still like it. I don't think I can make a reasonable assessment right now other than just kind of my instincts. My instincts say you should probably draft this somewhere around a high C. But definitely it could be something that is in the B territory, but this is probably a high C. Kronk. I want to love Kronk. 1, don't think about shifting. I mean, you've got the 2-drop, which you could shift onto. It's certainly feasible. But that 2-drop you already don't really want to include in your deck. If you've been forced to take the 2-drop Kronk before now, and this comes in like pack 4 or pack 3 or something, and you were forced to take a couple of them, you might draft this ever so slightly higher. But here's the problem with Kronk. Let's take the shift out of the equation for a second. By the time you drop him, assuming you can drop a 7-cost uninkable, and you challenge another character, and hopefully banish it, a 6/6 you should be able to banish almost anything, you probably don't even have a reasonable free drop in your hand anyway. Your hand's probably empty, and or you could just pay the ink for it. Because you put him down and he was probably the last card that you played in your hand. And next turn you draw something that you've got 7 ink out. You don't need to probably play it for free. You can probably just pay the ink for it. So unless you're drawing a bunch of cards, such that by the time you play this, you still manage to have 3 or 4 cards in hand. So you compare this to Mufasa, who is admittedly 1 more uninkable. But he puts cards back in your hand when you play him. Right? So by the time you go to use his ability to kind of make things more free, right? You get your ink twice in the turn. You've got 3 cards in hand. For him, you've only got 1 and you can almost certainly play it. Especially since it's 5 cost or less. So he's really, most of the time, a 7-cost uninkable 6/6/1. And that's way not good enough. So he's an F. He looks like he should be amazing. And he's an F. Yeah. The Knights are all awful. Again, there's really only 1, maybe 2 locations that you should care about. This happens to partner really well with the second best location. But even so, gaining resist 2 on a 1 willpower means all it takes is a 4/4. And you're feeling not so great about this. Yes, it can challenge evasives, but again, you're probably not getting resist on him anyway. which means that it's dying to the 2/2 Daisy evasive, if that's the one you happen to want to challenge. For a 3-drop, no, you can do so much better at this. So this is... I don't even want to call it a D, because, you know, most of the time it's a 3-cost, 3/1/1. Nothing else matters. And so it's really an inkable F. You're not playing Pete's. I mentioned this before. You're not playing Pete.deck. It's an F. This is the aggressively statted. You know, this is Maui from set 1, but 1 cost less and uninkable, right? There are all these pushed vanilla stats, but making them uninkable. This is probably the worst of them, just because it takes you so long to get out, and then it's just a 7/10 3 lore, and you can probably race that at that point. I mean, it's big. Super hard to deal with. If you play this and you're ahead on lore and you can be racing, you're probably going to do all right. So definitely, I would probably draft this, but I'd probably draft it in the C range. I'd draft it later on. And again, 7-drop uninkables, you got to be really careful about your mulligans. You got to be really careful about how you play out your turns, how you ink, how you play cards, so that you can get to 7. Most of the nights are hot garbage, and this is another one. I have to have a Snow White in play to get this bodyguard, and even then, it's 1 strength more than the 3-drop Fix-It Felix? What? Inkable F. I mentioned the 2-drop, 2 lures before. Look it up. It's a low C. It might be higher in other sets. In this set, there's too much better stuff going on. And this Arthur is going to die a terrible, terrible death to the Ruby Arthur. I don't mind this one. This is one of the nights that I'm like, because, so if I don't have a lot of evasives or ways to deal with evasives, I almost need Happy to make sure that I don't die to an early Archimedes, lose to an early Archimedes, right? If I'm, you know, sitting across from the 3-drop Archimedes and I don't have an answer for it in my deck, or not very many of them, I'm going to be real happy if he was one of my early drops. But he's also 1 cost 2/1, right? So I think he's less than the support one in Sapphire. So, and he's less than the 2/2s, definitely. But I think it, you know, I wouldn't mind playing him. If I needed an early drop and I don't have a lot of ways to deal with evasives, I'm looking at Happy. So mid C, low C, depending on how many 1-drops I've already got. Items and locations don't matter in draft. Yes, they may occasionally, but not nearly enough to play this card. It's a 6-drop 3/5/1. It's an inkable F. I'm getting a lot of things Fs lately. I'm pretty sure a lot more than originally I looked at. This is the best night by far. Oh my gosh. Obviously, you do not want to play him early. I had one test draft where I had to, because I had like no early plays, and they were coming out with some the opponent had 2 1 willpower characters in play. I'm like, all right, I could get my 2 for 1 that way. But if you're getting him turn 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that, depending on how many turns you get to, and he's the last card you play, and then he's effectively a 2-cost 1/3 draw 2 cards. Woo! Do not count him in your 2-drop slot, because you really don't want to be playing him on turn 2. You need other 2-drops to facilitate him. And again, look at your uninkable count, right? He is uninkable, and he's one that you don't want to be playing right away. So a character that's uninkable, or a card that's uninkable that you don't want to play right away and can't ink, needs to be really good and needs to make sure that it doesn't mess with your ratios of ink. So you're not going to draft him high every time, but he's a high B most of the time. If you've got the capacity for the uninkable, he is absolutely a high B. I've never not been happy to have him in my deck. Arthur. Another 7-cost uninkable. It's got the shift, and you've got the Ruby Arthur that you're very happy to have in your deck. So this might be a real shift target, because when you play this character, only when you play him, Chosen character gains Challenger +2 and Resist +2 and can challenge ready characters this turn. Which means if you shift him, he can give it to himself. Now, you can play it on 7 and give it to something else, right? But if you shift him in, you can give it to himself. Again, be very cautious with shift. You're giving yourself card disadvantage, right? But if you can effectively rush a character with a challenging for 5 and resist +2, as long as you're not in a situation where he's going to die on the backswing to a bad trade otherwise, I'm digging that. And even at 7 drop, that's a solid ability on a really decent body. Not super exciting for 7, but still, really decent body. 3/6/3 lore, nothing to scoff at. Be careful with the 7 drop on Inkables. 7 drops period, but especially on Inkables. But I like this one. Is it a bomb? No. But it's a high B for me, and because it's legendary, if you open it, you're going to take it. Unless there's a better legendary there. But if you could snag this 2nd pick, 3rd pick, yeah, take it. All right. Pete is a constructed card. Otherwise, he's a 3-cost 3/3. Not a terrible stat line, right? 3-cost 3/4/1 is the vanilla stat line. So, he's probably a high D. Maybe low C, but probably a high D. But don't be looking for him to shut down your opponent's action cards. That's not really relevant. Tug of War is one I'm still kind of torn on. Because I love mass damage. Grab Your Swords in the first chapter was amazing for draft. I love mass damage. It is inkable. And if you can't deal with evasives other ways, this could be a huge way to deal with evasives. It's not going to deal with Zazu, but it is going to deal with the Hyenas and the Brunies and the Archimedes, the 3-drop one, right? 1 damage to each non-evasive character is not particularly exciting for 5. So I would say I'm only taking this card remotely highly, like middle of the pack, only if I don't have other ways to deal with evasives, my own evasives or other removal. But even then, you probably shouldn't take it very high. Mid-C, right? Near the end of the pack, last third of the pack. If I know I don't have ways to deal with, if it's pack 3, and I see this, the last third of the pack, and I don't have many ways to deal with the small evasives, okay. When will my life begin? So, we've talked about a few cards that draw a card and are actions, but aren't particularly impactful. This bucks that trend. Not massively. Don't get too excited. But 1, it's a song. 2, the effect, depending on your deck, can be very impactful. Specifically, I'm a big fan of King of Hearts. This, when you go to early activate King of Hearts and you don't really have other ways to protect him, if you can sing with another character on the character of theirs that's most likely to take out King of Hearts or able to take out King of Hearts, that can be a huge boon, right? And it draws the card to replace itself. I find myself inking this a lot more than I play it, but there's been times where I've been able to sing this and or play it, very occasionally hardcast it, where I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty happy with the results of what I got here. So what does that equate to? Mid-C, maybe high C. Don't get too excited, but definitely don't lump it in the same thing as like the Challenger 2-cost Amethyst or the heal one from Amber. It's not in the same category as those two. All right. Coming down here, duck for cover. No. This is card disadvantage. Yeah, maybe it saves your best character for a turn. So put it as a D, ink it 99% of the time, and maybe 1% of the time it does something cool. Okay. But do not be actively looking to play that. Food fight. No. It's uninkable. I need to exert a lot of my characters and pay a decent amount of ink to do any sort of significant damage. No. That's an F. That's a hard F. Shield of Arundel is another one that's ink, but has an okay ability once in a blue moon. But this should be ink 99% of the time, so it's a D. It's not unusable, but... Oh, man. Plate armor, make it inkable for me, and we're talking. Because repeatable resist +2 that works on my turn and my opponent's turn, that I can use on one character this turn and next turn a different one, so repeatable, but not just like always on the same character type thing. But 4 cost is already tough enough for that ability. And then add to that the fact that it's uninkable, and we can't talk. It's an F. But man, if this was inkable, I'd be really tempted to make this work. Uninkable, it is going to be annoying against you sometimes, but you just got to know your opponent's wasted a slot, and if you can get rid of their characters, this becomes a huge anchor for them. Steel Chronicon is the hardest of Fs. 6 cost to deal 1 damage the first time I use it? Uninkable? What? At inkable, this would be awful. Uninkable? What are you thinking? This is the hardest of Fs. Get out of here. Badanon requires villains, which is way too much of a threshold, and on top of that, it's such a high cost to activate the first time. And on top of that, it requires you to play something with the same name? I know that these aren't all made for draft, so I use that incredulity in my voice isn't to say that, you know, what are they thinking? Why were they making this for draft? Of course they're not making it for draft. They're making it for a fun villains deck. But like, oh. All right. And we're ending off with pretty much the only other location that you might consider. And I know, shout out to Nive. Nive is a big fan of the Seven Dwarves Mine from what I've seen on Twitter. Cool, man. I got problems. One, I hate most of the knights. So the second line is very irrelevant for me. Occasionally I might have a knight, but it's pretty irrelevant. So I'm looking to spend 4 ink before I deal the first damage. And it's only once per turn. The first time you move a character here. So I can't even like chain this off multiple times in one turn. The thing it does have going for it is it gains lore in addition to that. But it's also 6 willpower, so it's pretty easy to remove. I think for me this is a high D in that I'm not going to actively look to play this. Because even if I say I want to build a Knights deck, right? I got 2 that I like. I got Happy and I got Doc. Doc I really like, but I want to play later. Happy I'm okay with, but I'm not actively looking to put him in my deck. So what are we talking about here? Nah, I feel like this is probably a high D. You know, if you want to get spicy and draft this at a low C, where you actively look to take it, pick 9, 10, something like that, go nuts. But I think you're probably going to be too slow trying to run it this way. All right, that is it. That's steel, and that makes all 6 colors, which means the only thing we got left is the next video is going to be kind of a brief rundown of the best cards in all of the different costs and kind of what curve you want to hit to make sure that you're not getting too, you know, wide-eyed about all these amazing 5-drops and all of a sudden you look down and your deck is 25 drops. There's a lot of sexy 5-drops. But yeah, we need to balance, right? So we'll look at that. We'll look at the best cards so that if you didn't have time to look at all of this, or you've watched this video first for some reason, you're like, I can't watch another, 40 minutes times 5 other colors. Fair. We're coming out with, it's the me show now. I'm coming out with my summary to hit you all with the best cards. All right. Thank you all so much. Let me know what you think. Do you think steel is the best color in this set for draft? Do you think amethyst is? Not that it matters. You can draft any color, but I always like to kind of identify what's my favorite color in any particular set for draft. I think it's amethyst, but steel's pretty darn close. So let me know what you think. See you all next time. Thank you again. You are amazing. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.